Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Living in Fullness podcast. Today on our podcast, we've got a career-driven lady full of personality, Linah Mukome. Linah is an MBA holder and an IT personnel in the financial services sector.
You are in for a treat. Welcome to the Living in Fullness podcast, where you will get relatable, authentic, entertaining, and thought-provoking content. I am your host, Naki. Here, we believe everyone has a story and every story has a purpose. It's when you own your story, your voice, and your journey that it's able to impact those around you. Our journeys and life experiences are not a coincidence. Join us on our journey to living their purpose on purpose by staying glued to learn more from real life experiences.
Welcome, Linah.
Thank you, Naki.
Thank you for coming through.
You're very welcome.
How are you?
I'm doing great. It was slow in the beginning, but it's about to get fast.
That's good. You know what? Every time I ask people how they are, I always get, I'm great, I'm fine, how are you? Almost like it's an automatic response to how are you? Or maybe people think it's out of courtesy that we're asking how they are.
Well, yeah, I agree.
Okay. Before we get into knowing who Linah is, we have a 30 seconds rapid fire game for you. 10 questions, try to answer all of them in 30 seconds. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. All right. First childhood friend's name.
Lynette.
Favorite movie?
Pass.
Role model?
Kamala Harris.
3 qualities of a good life partner.
Faithful. God-fearing. Responsible.
Nice. Title of a movie using your life experiences.
Wow. Life is what we make it.
Okay. One thing you regret spending money on?
Pass.
Read a movie or watch a movie.
Watch a movie.
Okay. 30 seconds is up. You managed to answer 4 questions. Well done, though.
Thank you. How many questions was I supposed to
10.
answer? Oh my word.
Wow. Okay. All right, Linah. So tell me, you've acquired a lot. You've done a lot for yourself, right? You've acquired a lot. You've done a lot for yourself. What are you most proud of?
Well, I don't feel like I've done a lot. I feel like I still need to do a lot. What am I proud about most? I think the past 2 years, simply because in the past 2 years, I opened a business, a hair salon. I accomplished my MBA, and I also started a new job, which is now my current job.
Beautiful.
All at the same time. So I think it was a lot of pressure having to juggle between the 3. I would think the most difficult things in my life.
I can imagine. You did your MBA whilst you're working, right?
Yes.
Now, I always say this because I had to do my school and study at the same time, and it was a lot. It was hectic. I barely had time for family. I had no time for my long distance relationship at that time. And you know, one thing I always believe in, one thing this podcast is actually built on is for you to live in fullness, there's more than just wealth, status, and power. It's you also being fulfilled in your physical needs, your spiritual needs, your emotional, as well as aesthetics, right? So, but one thing that I've noticed though is people end up acquiring all those things, and then other areas of themselves are struggling. I love it when women like you are thriving. So I don't know, but what do you think? How was it having to do work and study?
It was tough, I must tell you. I think it's only now that I feel like I'm thriving, simply because I've finished the MBA and now I'm just focusing on my career and my business. But it was really tough. It was one of the toughest moments of my life. I went through a lot. I do believe some of my relationships were affected. My family, my friendships. So it was really tough. I saw a new me that I'd never experienced.
That's nice. And sometimes pressure exposes us to ourselves, right? So, you know, like that's the same thing that I was talking about, because I believe that when you're thriving, right, in certain seasons, you cannot be thriving in all areas of your life. So one has to give, like certain aspects of your life have to be prioritized more than others, right? So that's in your case, you probably had to tell your friends a lot of, I cannot meet you today, I cannot do this now. And that's probably hard. But let's talk about how you had to sacrifice as well, because one thing that we end up sacrificing in difficult times is rest. as well as a spiritual life, right? Because everything else can sort of speak for itself. Your friends can tell you that, okay, you haven't been making time for us. Your work, you don't get promoted. But then when it comes to your spiritual life and rest, they can speak for themselves over the long term. So how did you manage to maintain your spiritual life and as well as make sure you rest during that period?
One thing I must tell you, I love a good sleep. If I don't have a good sleep, I will not function. So I made sure that I had enough sleep time. I think that was the one thing that actually contributed to my physical well-being. I wasn't exercising, but once in a while I would actually go cycling with one of my buddies from the MBA. Wow. So that really helped. But we only maybe did it once a month, which wasn't enough. I actually stopped exercising, which I've only started now again. And now I was thinking when I only joined the gym last week, and I was just regretting that I should have been doing this last year whilst I was under so much pressure, because I can see the benefits that come from exercising.
Yeah, that's true. I need to get my life together. Me and working out. Okay, maybe at home. The moment I go to a place where a lot of people are working out, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Have you always wanted to work in the financial services sector? What did you aspire to be as a child?
Yes, definitely. I've always wanted, actually after university. So I started I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I started at the University of Zimbabwe. And my internship was actually one of the banks back in Zim. It was called Kingdom Financial Holdings. And that was when I fell in love with the financial services. And I always said, even though I started business in IT, I always said I would want to actually work within the financial services. And then I relocated to South Africa in 2008. And because you're looking for a job, you can't choose, right? You take whatever opportunity that comes first. And it was actually at a software company, not necessarily in the financial services. So I worked there for 5 years, and then I went back to financial services. And ever since then, I've never looked back.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. So tell me, at what point did your corporate journey begin, and how was it? How did you get into entrepreneurship? Because now you're actually doing both. You've got a full-time job, you're an entrepreneur. That's a lot, like your goals.
Yes, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My mom used to help her dad run his businesses way back. My mom was actually a single mom, and this is how she actually got her income. She then continued with one of her late father's businesses. It was a small business, like a small grocery shop. Maybe it wasn't anything big, but she involved me in the day-to-day running of that business from a very young age. And this is how I actually learned the ropes of entrepreneurship. And then fast forward now, I move on, I come to South Africa, and I've always had this passion. My passion was actually in dressing up. I love shopping. I love looking good and everything. So just to manage my shopping habits, I decided, you know what, let me have a business, like an image-related business. And one of my friends introduced me to the hair business. And that's how I started my business, but it was just from my boots. And just 3 years ago during COVID, I couldn't sell as much hair as possible. So I decided, you know what, let me step out. And I took a risk. I decided, you know what, actually there were a lot of things that happened during that time. It was COVID. I was working for a management consulting firm. And during that time, because it was very uncertain, they decided to lay off a few of their employees, and I was one of them. So I decided, you know what, I cannot just work up and face myself. Let me take a step out. And then I actually took my pension fund from that job, and I decided, you know what, let me open a business, one of the businesses that I've always wanted to open, which is a salon. So this is how I then got into the salon business.
You know what? Shopping is always a good excuse to make money. Like it's a good motivation. But another thing that I've noticed is sometimes God pushes us to certain points where we're like, now I need to discover my purpose and who I am. So it's actually good that when you were pushed to the limit, you said, okay, God, what am I supposed to do? What is my purpose? And now you're living your purpose, I feel. You don't agree?
No, I agree. It's part of my purpose. Just yesterday, so we were doing cell group. I hope you understand what cell group is. When we get together as a smaller group in a bigger church and we discuss about our lives. And we're talking about running a race, which is part of my spiritual life that you asked. And I actually was thinking, what is it that I'm supposed to do? And now when you say you're living your purpose, yes, I'm living my purpose, but am I really living to the fullest of my purpose? So that's why I was like, really?
Which is what this podcast is about. And it's a journey, right? I don't think we ever reach to, I mean, if we reach, then we don't need God anymore.
You're right.
So I think it's a journey, it's a process, one brick at a time. But you know, I was trying to mind my own business until you said you were raised by a single mom, and you strike me as a very independent lady. Do you think this could be the reason?
I think that's, that is most of the reason why, I present myself as an independent woman is because I saw my mom work so hard to provide for us, and even to pay for my school fees. It wasn't easy, but I could tell you I could never go back to school. I was in boarding school without my fees fully paid. So I learned the ropes, like, if you needed things to happen, you have to take action, you have to step out. Even though at times it seems like it's risky, but you never know until you try. So that is part of the reason maybe why I present myself as someone that is independent. I know everything is possible.
It's good. It's good. But you know, how was it for you though? What were some of the challenges that you feel you had growing up because you had a single mom? And did it affect how you started your business by any chance?
I would say the challenge was, so when I moved to boarding school, you don't really have close family, right? Your family are your friends. And I went to boarding school for high school. And maybe one of the challenges was just, you know, when you have friends around you and they're talking about their families, their mom and dad, and you're like, all right, what do I say? What do I talk about? I can only talk about my mom. But you know what? It was also a good experience for me, good exposure, because you meet people from different backgrounds. And some of them, maybe they would feel they were worse off than me because some of them didn't even have parents. They lost their parents. So I took it as, you must be grateful for where you are. And you must use those as opportunities and as stepping stones to where you are going. You must never use your disadvantaged background as an excuse for not achieving what you want. Use that as stepping stone to where you want to be.
I love that. Like you're such, you know, I always say that when I met Linah, I said, this lady is a force. I need to learn from her.
Thank you.
So what's the most challenging part of you having to own a business and now doing full-time work at the same time? Because when you started your business, you thought you were not working. So you said, okay, since I'm not working at the moment, let me start my business. But then now you've got work. Yeah,
so I think the most challenging part was, for me, actually, the most challenging part was having to wake up and having nothing to do, which is not like me. Obviously I was interviewing for some jobs. Actually, I worked for one of the major banks, and I had like 2 interviews that were in progress at that point in time. But I thought, okay, let me use this part of my time to actually do something useful, something that I've always wanted to do. But when everything now came into place, when the job offer was placed, and then when this salon was starting to run, I realized, you know, with entrepreneurship, it's really tough, I must say. And one of the ladies that told me, that had a salon as well, that I knew, told me, now you will understand what it means to be an employer. You know, when you tell your employee, this is what you must do, and you expect them to actually deliver, and they don't. So it was really hard for me, even having employees not turn up for work. And at that point in time, I think at each point I had 2 employees. So if one didn't turn up, it meant that there would be 1 person at the salon, which is really tough. And people are not telling you that they're actually leaving. They found another opportunity, or they've decided not to come back. So I know those are some of the things that used to give me sleepless nights. And then, well, as I was settling in my new role at the bank, and then my boss then resigned. So there was a lot of uncertainty, and then the pressure that also came with the MBA that I was never prepared for. So it was a lot of things. And one of the challenges was actually, for the first time in my life, I was anxious. I would wake up and I would feel like, overwhelmed before I could even start the day. Like, what is it that I'm going to achieve? There's an assignment waiting for me that is due in the next day or two. And there's the salon business there where someone has decided not to pitch up for work, and there's a deadline at work. So it was one of the most difficult times of my life, but by God's grace, I made it.
It should be hard. And you know, one thing that I was listening to Vusi the other day, I don't know if you know Vusi, and he was talking about business, right, and entrepreneurship, and how everyone wants to say, I want to start a business, I want to become an entrepreneur. But you don't realize that it comes with a lot of challenges, because that's where you're being fed from. And if it's not doing well, then you don't get paid. Because you own the business, you probably get paid last and everybody else gets paid first. And you know, one thing that I noticed is when you're working, your salary comes, whether the business is making a loss or not. But you know, when your business is making a loss, you don't get paid, you know?
Yeah, so that has been one of the major challenges. I can tell you for the first 2 years, we were not making any profits. And like I said, I had 2 employees, and I had to make a decision. At times you have to make tough decisions, and one of those decisions was, even if I didn't get paid from the salon, which was okay, I'd spend some of my weekends at the salon just to cover up for some other employee that I couldn't afford to pay. So it was really tough, but there are lessons I can tell you with trying any business or any opportunity. There are always lessons that no one else can ever tell you or can ever teach you, because those are practical lessons. You wake up and this is what it looks like, and you must make a decision instantly. You must know how to navigate whatever challenge that you have at that point in time, which is different from narrating the story where I'm telling you this is how it went, because now it's in retrospect.
Yeah.
So those are some of the major challenges that I can say I faced.
I love that. And I always say, now that you're saying, when you look at it in retrospect, you're like, okay, it doesn't look bad anymore. But if probably someone saw you in that state, they'd have been like, okay, this is probably eating you up. You know, I always say, when you speak from a place of healing rather than from a place of pain, it's different. Because now you're speaking in retrospect, you've already healed from whatever was going through in that moment. So now you're able to impact others as well. So tell me, with all this that you've acquired and how well you're doing in your career, do you feel men get intimidated by you? I'm asking because, or maybe do you think that they're intimidated by the fact that, you know how the society says men should provide, men should do well and all that, and now maybe they look at you and they say, okay, what do I have to offer her? It seems like she's doing well, right? What do you men get intimidated by? I really want to understand. Is it success or the thought of providing? What do you think?
I wish I could answer that for you, but I can certainly give you my perspective. What I can say is, in general, whether you're doing so well, I don't know what is your definition of doing so well, right? Is people get intimidated. You meet different people, even your friends, they can get intimidated as well. So you have got different perspective, but having been on the MBA journey also helped me, because there I was in a room full of what I think were intelligent people and everything, but having to learn from different people and having to interact with them. And you see that you can either decide to be intimidated or you can decide to learn from the next person. But just to answer your question is, I do feel at times people get intimidated, not necessarily just men. When people hear that you've got a business, they think
it's intimidation.
Yes, it's making money. But at some point I used to tell people, you know what, it was okay for me to make enough money to just pay my employees. You know, it was okay at that point in time to make money for me to just buy stock. It was okay, and I had to be okay with that. And one of the things that really helped me is having friends, a support system. I remember one of my friends actually told me, with all of those 3 important things that are happening in your life, I think you need to prioritize. You know, look at your business as a side gig. And the moment that I did that, I liberated myself. I was like, I don't need to take this seriously, because my salary is coming in. I need to finish my MBA in the next 2 years. And then this can be a side gig, because after the MBA, the business will still be there. And then also my boss at the time, I was in a secondment role last year for 6 months. And she actually used to tell me, you remind me of my younger self. You're too, you're determined, you're a go-getter and everything.
Yeah.
But you must know that you never get to everything.
Exactly.
It's okay to get a few things done in that day and leave the rest for the next day. So that liberated me.
That's good. So do you think at some point people need to leave their everyday job to move into entrepreneurship, or can you run both at the same time for the long term?
I think at some point you can, depending on the type of business that you're running. If it's a hands-on business, I think at some point you have to leave full-time employment. For me, my business, I'm not hands-on on that type of a business.
It's running itself now.
Yes, now it's running it. As long as I get the right people to do what I want and to do, it's fine. But I do feel like if you want to go into full-time entrepreneurship, then you have to leave your job. But also, I'm still surviving from my salary. So yes, that's part of the reason.
That's good. Now, I always say that if you put the right processes in place, then your business can run itself and you don't have to always be hands-on. So, Linah, do you ever feel pressure to get married? You know how society is.
Yes.
Do you ever feel pressure?
I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
There are moments where the pressure is so much, and there are moments, and there's pressure from society. There's pressure from also within. So there's pressure. I can't say there's no pressure. There is pressure, especially now. I can tell you, people are like, "Oh, now you've done your MBA.
Yeah.
What else do you need to do?
Yeah, what are you waiting for?"
Exactly.
But you know what I always say? I always say that there's always going to be pressure. Society will set all these timelines. You know, you turn 25, they start asking you, when are you getting married? You get married, when are you having a child? You have a child, when are you having the second one? Is it a boy, is it a girl? When are they starting school? Like, society will always set all these timelines for you, but you have to choose what's right for you as well, right? But before I let you go, I need to ask you, how do you cope with resistance when trying to fulfill your purpose? You know, because for me, right, when I get a blocker, if I know and I feel like, okay, God, I heard you. You said I should start this business, you know? And then I start getting resistance, blockers. I'm like, okay, God, maybe I didn't hear you properly. Let's track back, you know, and start all over. Should I quit this? Should I get back to something else? So how do you cope with resistance when following your purpose?
So I would say, trust God. I've seen people say trust the process, and I've always wondered, what is that process?
What's the process?
Are we talking about God's process? So for me, at some point in my younger days, I learned to trust God, and from that time, I never looked back. So whenever, even if I can tell you, I think for almost 10 years, or maybe just below 10 years, I was looking for premises for that salon, and I could never get them. I would try this and it would get to the point of about to sign the list, and it just never happened.
When it's not time, it's not time.
It's not time, and you don't realize that maybe even for me, what I learned from that whole process was even all those locations I was looking at, they were not the right locations for me.
Wow.
But I didn't know. I was pushing and I'd feel like I'm facing resistance, but God knew.
It's not time.
It wasn't time. And then the location that I ended up getting at that point in time before COVID was very expensive. That was beyond my reach. But during COVID, it was an opportunity to actually tap into the high-end market. So God's timing, but at times I must tell you, it's hard when you're facing resistance, but you need to surrender to say, God, I've done everything that I can in my own strength. I think you do it.
It's not left to you.
Yes,
you know?
It's up to you whether I should have it or not. Because at some point, then you begin to doubt: is it what really God wanted?
Did you ask me to do it?
Yes. Did God really want me to do it?
Yeah.
Yes, and it's common, but you must never waver from who you believe in with God.
That's a good one. Thank you, Linah. So everyone, please tell us in the comment section, how do you deal with resistance when you're trying to follow your purpose? Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment, and do everything you have to do. Thank you so much. Bye.